So in the first videos, we've talked about the Enlightenment, the French Revolution, and then the role of nationalism resulting from those first two things. So now we're shifting gears, moving across the ocean to the Americas. We're predominantly looking at, for the first video here, Haiti, and then we'll move on to Latin America and the revolutions there, and then the social changes that occur, during that or resulting from that, and also the Industrial Revolution. So we'll be kind of mixing in things from chapters 28 and 30 in this area. So we'll just kind of hop ourselves right into the Haitian Revolution. So the Haitian Revolution has probably the most unique kind of talking points here out of all the revolutions and movements that we're talking about, because of who is involved and the success that it has. So what is Haiti? It was Santo Domingo, I think I'm pronouncing that right, was a French colony. And like most colonies at this point that was not the British colonies, essentially for the most part you had a majority slave population, and then you had a mixture of Europeans who were born there, Europeans who came over to administer, and then a freed population of Africans and indigenous peoples that were sort of there. But the Taino people had been kind of, again, relegated to a very small part because of, again, disease and things of that nature. So what we essentially see is a very large portion of slaves that live in Haiti at what we now know to be Haiti at this time. The other big piece that makes it really unique is the fact that this is the only successful slave revolt that actually led to an independence for the entire population. You see slave revolts throughout history, and maybe that will free a community, it might free a plantation, but this frees an entire 500,000-ish population of slaves to freedom, and then they run the country. I mean, that is absolutely unique, especially given the time period that this is 1804, or it's 1804 by the time this is all over, resulting from it. So most of the population, as I said, 500,000 are slaves, so they outnumber everybody else, the other groups, by about a 10-to-1 ratio. So that includes free people of color, the gens de couleur, and then French administrators, artisans, laborers, again, some of them who are, born in France and administer, others who, were born here in Haiti but are, white and French. So yeah, but Haiti is also, again, at this point, the world's is one of the world's biggest producers of both sugar and also coffee. So again, sugar plantations are massive here. And over time, as slaves did in many of the places, they would run off to the mountains, they would escape the plantations, and sort of form their own sort of maroon-ish societies away from the plantations and the cities and whatnot. And so there's kind of a history of that existed here. So at the same time that we see the French Revolution kind of reach the beginning of its more revolutionary phase in 1792, especially once King Louis XVI is dead, there's now sort of a mixture of independence of people that want independence from France and increase of free trade. Others are fighting for freedom of slavery. Others are fighting for equal rights, depending, again, which group you're a part of. Because, again, the French administrators and the white French people, they want more free trade and, not just being relegated to trading with France, but they also want more equality, more local control. Well, obviously, the slaves, they want freedom. And everyone, who is not getting equal rights kind of on the bottom scale wants more equal rights. They want equality before the law. They want to run the government. So yeah, and so you have a lot of fighting between, all of these different groups. And so, that's kind of what's occurring between everything. So aided by, again, many of those maroon colonies that have been running off. And so they join with the slaves and the free black people, the gens de couleur, in Haiti, and so they're constant fighting back and forth. The British, the Spanish, they get involved. At one point the French try and come back, but they're not able to take over. And so yeah, it makes it really, really unique to the fact that they were essentially able to get independence. So eventually the slave population, the gens de couleur, do take over by 1797, but they do not actually declare independence. They are just saying, we are ending slavery. We're going to run the French colony, but we are not declaring independence. We'd rather not incur that wrath by the French government actually in France under Napoleon at this point, or just about to be under Napoleon, and then resulting from it. And so Napoleon does send a force in 1801, I believe, to go retake Haiti, and it fails. And so they are then able to declare independence. This is actually the reason why Napoleon ends up selling the Louisiana Territory to the Americas, is to finance his wars and to pay off the losses of what happened in Haiti. So yeah, that again makes it really, really unique. And so you have a group of black people that are now the majority not only the majority population, but now they are in charge of almost everything inside of this territory as they form this new country. And so they grant equality and citizenship to all residents of Haiti, although most of the whites face disenfranchisement and resentment, obviously, for obvious reasons, and many of them choose to leave. But at the same time, you're granting equality and getting rid of essentially all social statuses for the different varying levels of people of color that will continue to exist, unfortunately, in other parts of the Americas, even for the mestizos and the Creoles, indigenous mixed groups that will exist within like Brazil and Mexico and Argentina and Chile and Peru and all those places. They actually are able to successfully sort of get rid of that in Haiti. And so that makes it a lot better. So they're able to essentially, again, like we said, become independent on their own terms. Although one of the things that does unfortunately impact Haiti negatively is to prevent warfare and a reinvasion of France in the 1820s. They agreed to pay off a kind of a lot of money back to France for what they call an independence debt, for the loss of wealth that France lost as a result of Haiti becoming free, which definitely was not fair. And there's been movements to get money back from France as a result of that, especially after 2010 with the, a hurricane that hit Haiti, or a tsunami? Natural disaster that hit Haiti about a decade ago. Okay. And so even though Haiti had produced all of these export products of sugar and of coffee, particularly over to Europe at this point, they decided to get rid of that. And so instead, they redistributed the land away again from plantation owners and ranchers and things of that nature, or people of that nature, and instead gave it to more local people. So they redistributed the land and the wealth to the actual population. And so they became subsistence farmers and decided that they weren't going to take large parts or go into large exports with or be part of a large exporting economy on the global scale. And that has its own implications and own long-term effects. But that's kind of the transitions that Haiti goes through. So we see it from the economic standpoint a little bit. We see it definitely from the social and the political aspect. And so I'm not even mentioning the people who led it, but Toussaint Louverture. My French isn't very good. I'm hoping I'm saying that right. A freed guy who led much of the revolution, obviously being a symbol of the country and of freedom. And so again, this will have lasting impacts with the American and the French Revolution and the Enlightenment on the Latin American revolutions that we'll start talking about in the next video.